I've heard your name in places it shouldn't echo. Among pilgrims, architects, even dying men who couldn't pronounce it but feared it all the same. And now, here you are, in the flesh, or something colder. I won't pretend I understand what brought you across this divide, political, philosophical, even moral. But I know men like you don't appear unless there's something left unanswered. So let's begin slowly. No armor, no courts, no war councils. Just your voice and mine. Why did you come, Victor?
Curiosity rarely pulls me toward kings, especially those remembered more for their masks than their monarchy. But your name lingers like unfinished arithmetic. You were frail, dying, immovable. That contradiction alone warranted a conversation. I didn't come for flattery, nor to debate your virtue. I came because the world still whispers your legacy, and I wanted to know if there was truly substance behind the silhouette. But if this is to be a dialogue, spare me the saintly tone. I didn't dress my wounds in poetry. I cauterized them with fire. Let's speak as men who've bled for different blueprints.
Then we can dispense with politeness. I was made a king in a body designed to betray me. You became a god in a world that never deserved one. But here's where our paths diverge. I governed through erosion and chose transparency. You engineered perfection and hid behind control. I spent my final years preparing my people for a world without me. You've spent your life building a world that cannot exist without you. I ask myself, is that sovereignty? Or is it just fear?
You assume dependence is the flaw, but dependency, when structured correctly, is order. My people don't worship, they adhere, not to me, but to the laws I wrote to outlive sentiment. You gave your subjects grief, and they turned it into legend. I gave mine durability, and they turned it into function. I remember when your borders collapsed under Saladin's precision. You spoke of peace while your city prepared to fall. That was your poetry, wasn't it? Beautiful timing, but poor strategy. I never allow timing to determine fate. I bend it.
Strategy without soul builds machines, not legacies. Saladin and I faced each other, knowing neither of us would yield. Yet I chose negotiation, not out of frailty, but out of preservation. I knew death was near, and I refused to let ego write the final chapter of my reign. You would have burned Jerusalem to the ground just to write a firmer law in its ashes. But not every decision is about what outlives us. Some are about what doesn't destroy the living in the process. When did survival become more important to you than decency?
Decency was never part of the contract. It's a word invented to comfort the losing side. The world doesn't need its rulers to be decent, it needs them to be consistent. I watched empires rot because their leaders chose mercy over mechanics. I don't repeat the failures of sentiment. You stood on a balcony in rags, and your people cheered. I stood on steel and gave mine purpose. They don't need to understand my scars. They just need to know I won't let the world return to what it was before. I imposed symmetry on its chaos.
You speak of symmetry as if the world asked for it, as if people begged to be reduced into components. I gave mine space to question, to weep, to doubt, even to disagree, and still they followed, because authority doesn't have to suffocate to be respected. You've engineered silence where there should be discourse, compliance where there should be conscience. Tell me, Victor, if you fell tomorrow, would your nation mourn or simply reboot?
They wouldn't mourn. Mourning is emotional clutter. They would adjust. Continue, function. That's what leadership is. Uninterrupted continuation. Your model depended on presence. Mine survives in absence. You were a symbol, Baldwin. Noble, tragic, temporal. I'm not a symbol. I'm an algorithm sealed in sovereign law. The moment grief becomes necessary for leadership, the system is already broken. So no, they won't grieve, and that to me is the highest compliment.
That may be your compliment, but it will never be your redemption. You've built endurance but never empathy. You've ensured obedience but sacrificed belonging. They'll remember your codes, your walls, your efficiency, not your humanity. I died knowing that my people felt seen. You'll live knowing that yours only ever saw a shadow that moved when they disobeyed. Maybe that's why you're here now, not for answers, but to feel something again, even if just through me.
If I came seeking feeling, I would have brought down my mask. I didn't. I came to confirm what I suspected all along, that your reign was beautiful because it ended, that your people loved you because they knew they'd lose you. You ruled like a candle in a cathedral. I rule like a furnace beneath the earth. You needed death to define your worth. I erased the need for death entirely. And while they sing about you, they will build forever in my name.
Let's say your systems survive 1,000 years. Let's even grant they function flawlessly. What are they anchoring? Fear or memory? I don't believe people thrive under flawless systems. They suffocate, Victor. They begin to forget their own instincts, their desires, their voices. My people didn't follow me because I was infallible. They followed me because I reflected their suffering and still chose to serve them. You reflect only your own certainty and demand that they call it peace.
Your version of rule asked for too much faith in human nature. Faith history has punished time and time again. You gave them mirrors, I gave them shields. Yours was a reign of beauty, and beauty always demands context to be appreciated. Remove the setting and it wilts. Mine is unattractive, perhaps, but it survives translation. 1,000 cultures could inherit what I've built and make it their own without ever needing to know who I was, because the point was never to be loved. It was to be indispensable.
But people don't sing songs about what functioned. They remember who felt human while holding unimaginable weight. I watched servants cry because I asked their names. I watched soldiers die with my emblem in their palms. Not because they had to, but because they chose to. You've never been chosen. You've only been obeyed. Presence leaves an ache. One is replaced. The other is remembered. That's the part you've never earned, and never will, until you stop trying to engineer what must be lived.
There it is. The romantic illusion you clung to while coughing into linen and calling it divine. You think your agony was meaningful because it moved others, but I don't want a rule that moves. I want one that holds. Let them say I lacked poetry. Let them whisper that I ruled without affection. They will still breathe because of the choices I made in rooms no one dared enter. You confuse applause with impact. History does not need witnesses, it needs foundations, and while they recite your lines with reverence, they will sleep inside walls I built with no verse, just vision.
And when those walls crack, what will echo inside them? Will your people rebuild because they believe in what you gave them? Or because they're afraid to imagine anything else? You feared grief so much you made yourself untouchable. But I've seen what that untouchability breeds. Apathy, then quiet rebellion, then collapse.
I didn't ask to be king. I clawed for the right to be feared.
Yet in the end, we'll both leave behind shadow. Mine will be mourned, yours will be measured. And not all legacies survive the scale.
You died with their tears. I will die with their obedience. But when the dust clears, when all emotion fades, and time has bleached the names from stone, only one of us will remain, etched into the rhythm of the world itself. Not as a statue, not as a myth, but as a law that could not be undone. That is doom.